Welcome to the Global Wellness HQ family of podcasts. We are your international headquarters for resources and ideas and insight in relation to the 9 elements of holistic wellness. Join us as we interview local and international wellness experts and learn how you can implement and improve one element or dimension of wellness at a time. Our experts will share their practical tips on wellness in one of these core areas: emotional, intellectual, occupational, physical, environmental, financial, spiritual, social, or habitual. We created our family of podcasts as a resource for anyone who is looking to integrate the 9 elements of holistic wellness into their daily lives. Welcome to the show. The Global Wellness HQ family of podcasts is proudly sponsored by the Global Wellness HQ community. It's an online membership group where we meet, we share ideas, we share insights, and we all work together and help one another discover our own personal wellness journeys. If you'd like to join us, you can easily click the link below or scan the QR code, and we love hearing your stories. So we hope to see you in the community. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the show. I'm really excited. I have my new friend, Red Stafstrom, with us. Welcome to the show, Red.
Awesome to be here, man. I'm glad to be here.
All right. Well, let's start with the hardest question of all. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
So I have been in sales basically my whole adult life, and I did all the sales jobs that people hate. I did door to door, I did car sales, I did telemarketing, until the point where it led to full blown burnout. Um, the joke that I tell, it was from a guy named Tommy Johnigan, is I had a breakdown where I started crying. I didn't cry like a baby. I cried like a grown man. Babies don't have the lung capacity to do what I did. Um,
Love
so
it.
I hit this level of burnout, and from there, I started rebuilding everything that I knew about sales. And the problem with most sales literature is it's trash. It's written by people who make their best charismatic guesses. And it doesn't really follow human behavior and what humans actually want to engage with. There's a reason nobody has ever said, I wish that guy was more salesy, right? So when you think about that, I had to rebuild a way to sell that was completely different than what most people use. So I started studying psychology, neurology, anthropology, sociology, all these other ologies in order to build a sales process that's emotionally intelligent for customers, for employees, and for companies. So it's not just make more calls and turn it into a KPI factory. So it's really about emotional intelligent sales processes, particularly focused towards introverts because I'm a full blown hide in the basement introverted nerd. Dungeons and Dragons, video games, the whole nine.
Yeah.
Um, but it really comes down to that, is how do we create things that avoid that burnout, that don't align with our purpose. Nobody wants to be hated. Nobody wants to create a process or a sales process that alienates customers, but yet so many of us do it. So how
I
do we start fixing that?
I love it. Now, if I may, I'm going to ask you to share your definition because I think there's a lot of nonsense out there about introverts versus extroverts. What's your 50-cent definition that people can put their head around?
So my favorite definition out of all of them comes down to the way that we recharge. So imagine you've had a really, really bad week. Like you're just stressed, you're exhausted, nothing went right this week. What are you doing on Friday night? Are you going out to a bar? Are you hanging out with friends? Or are you shutting yourself off into the basement to play video games or read books? I am very much somebody who isolates myself when I get overwhelmed. And that's always the way I've been. Now, with that being said, think that doesn't mean that an introvert can't have social skills. We can learn social skills the same way we could learn to play basketball. It's the same idea. It just, if you naturally and you feel comfortable being alone, team sports may not be the highest thing on your list. So, how do you build these skills, these characteristics? And I've had to learn how to do all of this up to the point where I had to learn principles to make small talk because I hate small talk so much.
Right. And I love that because I think most sales training out there, if you look at the decades of training, it's very much, either you're an extrovert or you're just going to behave like an extrovert. And I think when I first saw you posting on LinkedIn and how we connected, it was the aha moment that a lot of salespeople talk a lot about mindset and how do you get back up and get ready? And I realized that they're probably addressing half of the audience, not the whole audience, because the introverts are going, I tried that. That's nonsense. It didn't work for me.
There's this idea of fake it till you make it in sales. And it's good advice, but you can't be a method actor for your entire adult life. Like, you can't fake it forever. And by trying to fake and be an extrovert when you aren't, that's a recipe for burnout. By trying to force that over and over again, you're going to run into that wall. Likewise, in most complex sales nowadays, like the kinds of sales that most B2B people do with multiple stakeholders, extroverts aren't even the best people for it anymore. Extroverts are very good at starting conversations, but they aren't as good at the deep conversations the way introverts are. And obviously I'm generalizing, like anytime you take the 9 billion people on earth and you can like
Put
divvy
them
them
into
up
two
into two
categories.
groups. Yeah, like you're making some generalizations, but what works best in sales is that level of authentic curiosity. It's about wanting to take this deep dive into a problem and solve it for somebody. And generally speaking, introverts like those deeper conversations. Like, I know we were talking before, I'm in Connecticut, you're in Canada. I don't care what the weather is up there right now. I assume it's cold because Canada, but that's all. But as long as you're safe, I don't care what the weather's like. I don't care what the traffic's like. I don't care about most of it.
Yeah.
Let's have this complex conversation where we can solve a problem, where we can go really deep and dive into what's going on. And I believe introverts do that better than most extroverts do.
Well, I'd read something, and I wish I could remember where, but it said that when they did a study, um, the bottom performing salespeople were always introverts. The middle was extroverts, and then the top, the rock star by exponential were again introverts.
Yeah. Well, again, it depends on the way that you're building your sales process.
Yeah,
If you're expecting an introvert to make 80 phone calls a day, they are going to burn out.
yeah,
But if they are focused on a smaller number of deep conversations, of very deep emotional entanglements, where you're talking about very complex issues and talking about engineering specs or legal requirements or whatever else, an introvert's going to be better.
yeah,
You know, um, extroverts, it's almost like a puddle versus a well in my mind.
yeah.
Extroverts are great at going to that bar and having that short 45-second conversation with everybody in the room, shake hands and kiss babies.
Yeah.
What an introvert can do is talk to that one person and really have that connection and really understand their problems, really dive deep into that. And I know I'm saying dive deep quite a bit, but that's what introverts do very well.
Yeah.
The problem is so many of our sales strategies are built for extroverts.
Yeah.
And how do we rebuild things in a way where it works for both? You know, not everybody is a hunter where they want to go out and hunt and like, okay, you're just go 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 go, and maybe we'll bring in a couple appointments a day. Some people need that more account manager as opposed to a sales development rep.
I love that, and I think that's in my life, I've succeeded in sales roles in spite of the system or the process.
Well,
Um, every single role, I readapted and I fought against the constraints because I wasn't the hunter, I was the farmer. It was let's build, take time, build the wells, take time to set up irrigation, and okay, now we got the crops, and you know
the,
harvests happen.
And this is the reason why I called my business broken salespeople, is because so much of what we're doing is broken. Um, let's just look into the history of sales. Like, really take a quick look at that. Sales as a whole really started with extroverts, like very highly charismatic people selling their ideals, the Dale Carnegies, the Napoleon Hills, the Ogmandinos, all of that. There was no social science in sales. There was nobody who actually listened to 10,000 sales calls and really studied this until the 1980s.
Hmm.
Robert Cialdini with influence, Neil Rackham with spin selling. Those were the first two books that I could find that really, like, they have like appendices in the back of the book, you know?
And the
Um,
new and improved influence is twice as thick with twice the appendices. It's
Yeah, and like Persuasion is great. Like, I'm a big Cialdini fan, but
yeah,
these are people who actually learned social science and social research.
yeah.
So prior to that, it was just the people who were willing to get on stage and talk about how to sell.
Which is not going to
You
be the
know, they were
introverts,
just
right?
talking about what worked for them. Like, okay, great. Like, yes, Dale Carnegie is brilliant. That he knew what he was doing, but what he was selling doesn't work in every instance.
Yeah.
So when you look at it as a science, when you look at sales as something that's been researched, like somebody dove into it, sales is only about as old as the Ninja Turtles. Like, I think influence was 84, spin selling was 88. 84, Turtles was created by Eastman and Laird. 88 was when the cartoon came out.
Yeah.
So think about that. Ninja Turtles is the same age as sales as a science.
It's both funny and scary, but yes, I
Yeah.
love that because I think that's for me. And again, maybe it's the introvert in me. I love the science of it.
Yes.
I never once liked the dumb luck that you knock on a door and this door they got a big dog they're gonna sick on you. Next door they got a little old grandmother who's gonna hand you cookies. It's like
Yeah.
my nerves
But
can't
that's
handle
how
that.
many businesses are built on that
Yeah,
they have a 1% conversion rate. Like, the statistic now is 80% of phone calls go to voicemail and 95% of voicemails never get returned. So
yeah,
you have a 76% chance of a call going nowhere, not even speaking to a human being.
yeah.
But
And
yet we're doubling down on that over and over and over and over again.
And it's funny. I probably shouldn't admit this publicly, but I'll welcome your feedback on
Yeah.
it. I love educating cold callers who are bad at their job, and I'm
Oh,
not a jerk,
absolutely.
but I feel like I owe it to them to say, "Look, buddy, you need to go do something else." Um, I used to be really annoyed by them, but now I take it and I say, "Look, buddy, I know you're just doing this to earn a living, but honestly, is this satisfying for you?" And it's funny because they hang up on me.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm trying to help you here, but
Yeah, but no, there's no, and so much of it is built on the wrong training to begin with.
yeah,
So much of it is, again, there's a reason people don't like salespeople. While more than, depending on what statistic you've seen, 80% of buyers want a seller-free experience.
yeah,
And it's because we keep teaching these tactics that we don't want used against us. They're
yeah,
they're company smart, customer stupid.
yeah. And it's funny because I remember reading Influence and I was really impressed where he presented it as a self-defense guide. Yet
Mhm.
every salesperson on the planet I know was like, "Ooh, I can use these
Yeah,
strategies." And I'm like,
just mustache twirling like
"Yeah,
Dudley Do. Like, yeah,
what's the
no,
villain in Dudley Do Right?"
like, the very first like sentence in it is, "I've always been a patsy."
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like reading that. I looked at it and I went, I need to spread the word because I know a lot of people that need to learn this.
Mhm.
But yet I know salespeople, they're like, oh, this is how I'm going to get people. And I'm like, you're what's
There's a
wrong with the
term
sales profession.
there's a term that I've come across that I've really started to love and hate in the same way. And I learned it during the Black Lives Matter protests in 2020.
Yeah.
It's called kettling. Kettling, like tea kettle kettling.
Yeah.
And what police will do during a protest is they will try to keep the protesters in one area. And then they will gradually try to shrink that area a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time. Eventually, the protesters themselves start to notice the walls closing in around them, and it triggers an adrenaline response: fight, flight, freeze. 4% of time, according to a RAND survey of military personnel, 4% of time you get a fight response. And
Hmm.
now that peaceful protest turned into a riot. But did it turn into a riot when the person threw the punch at a cop, or when the police started instigating?
Wow.
Now look at the way that we sell. So, Jeff, do you like water?
I
Do you
sell
like
water.
clean water? Well, here's my water filtration system. It costs $3,995. Do you want delivery Tuesday or Wednesday?
That triggers my hell no response always, which is a
Fight, flight,
funny thing.
freeze.
Yeah.
Yeah, fight, flight, freeze. Fight is hell no.
Yeah.
Flight is you just hang up, you leave the conversation, or freeze, let me think about it. If you hear let me think about it, it's because you triggered an adrenaline response in your customer.
Yeah. And that's I love when salespeople say, "Oh, I got 50 qualified leads. They're thinking it over," and I'm like, "No, you don't."
No, no, you scared them.
Yeah, and it's funny because I know salespeople that would argue, and I'd love your thoughts on this. If you haven't triggered fight, flight, or freeze, you're not selling hard enough. And-
So I remember when I was selling door to door, there was a sign. One of the managers that I worked with, he had a sign behind his desk that said, "Salesmanship starts at the first no." And the idea was you need to overcome objections, overcome objections. Every customer that I have sold that I had to overcome a bunch of objections and I had to close, I hated working with those people. Every
Exactly.
single, like those people that you had to fight and grind for, the juice was never worth the squeeze.
That it's funny. One of my other podcast guests, that's her favorite quote,
Yeah.
and I was like, "That is so
I don't
true."
remember where I heard it from, but I've been loving it forever. Like it's just once you think about it, like I cannot tell you, like when I was in car sales, I was very, very good at that high pressure sale. I could sit
Yeah,
somebody down and I could remain calm and keep pushing them and just force them to mirror my body. Like I was very good at it.
yeah,
I have cost myself probably I'm I don't know if I've quite hit, definitely thousands of dollars, but possibly tens of thousands of dollars by closing deals.
yeah,
Because when you're selling cars, so much is tied into that customer satisfaction survey. Yes, I moved the metal, I
yeah,
sold the car, but then they ding me on the customer satisfaction survey because I bullied them into buying the car.
yep,
And because they dinged me, I lose that bonus. So
yeah.
closing those customers cost me more money than the 100, $200 that I made from them.
Yeah, and it's that you have that little thrill of a short-term victory, but
Yeah.
and I think that's what a lot of sales miss. And I'm gonna
Mhm.
just say, I think this is where the introverts shine is getting the second sale,
Yeah.
and the third, and more importantly, getting the introductions and the referrals.
Well, and that's the thing. So few companies, I mean, particularly right now in the SaaS world, I see this as a major problem, is everybody loves customer acquisition. But customer acquisition is 5 times more expensive than referrals and repeats. So why aren't you building a strategy around that?
Yeah,
When was the last time you called your current customer base?
yeah.
And
I
that's a whole nother diatribe to go down. But the reason we're talking about this, and just to kind of bring it back, this is a wellness podcast.
Yeah,
What does that do to you as a business owner? What does it do to your staff? What does it do to your culture? What does it do to burnout as a whole? I've seen statistics where quota attainment in the SaaS world is as low as 24%, which means 76% of people walk around feeling like a failure on your sales floor every day.
yeah, and they represent your brand.
Ex- but okay, 76% of people feel like screw ups.
Yep.
what's that doing to the rest of your office? What's that
Hmm.
doing to the feel? Like, yeah, you're chasing your numbers, but at the expense of high employee churn, low employee morale, a miserable office environment. It's penny smart, dollar stupid.
Yeah. I think one of my favorite plays when I was in high school, and it's always stuck with me, was a play by Arthur Miller called Death of a Salesman. And
Mhm.
it's just I can see Willie Loman in the modern era, and it's like just no, like let's realize that there's a different, better way. So we've talked a lot about some of the challenges. What is some of the advice you would give to help people, because that is one of the things about this podcast is we like practical. What are a couple things people can do to enjoy their life a little better and maybe avoid that burnout from a bad fit with the sales process?
I'm a big fan of developing interpersonal and intrapersonal intelligence. Now, interpersonal is constantly being pushed in sales trainings, but we very rarely take the time to try to understand ourselves, understand what our own strengths, our own weaknesses are. How do we function in that right world? If you are an extrovert, you can be good in that hunter role. So develop that way. Like if you like that constant hunt, the simple, the replicated process, stick with that. But that's not going to work for everybody. So maybe if you're an introvert in the sales role, aim for the bigger accounts. Aim for people who already know a big pool of your potential clients. I when I did real estate coaching, one of the places that I would tell real estate agents to talk to is local hospitals or local universities. Get to know people in HR because
Hmm.
they're going to know that they tend to bring in a lot of people from out of state to work in those hospitals and they're going to need a house. They don't know anybody. So
And
that one relationship with that HR manager at a university or a hospital can get you five, six, seven clients a year.
yeah.
So rather than focus on getting five or six clients out of nowhere, find that one relationship that will get you those five, six clients.
I love that, and that not only helps you with your income, but it also helps you with burnout because
Yes.
same effort, you're getting six clients. I'd do that all day long, every day, if I could, scale by a factor of six.
Yeah. So, but it's about how do you know, almost take a day off of work to figure out how to work the next day. Like, what's the smartest way for you to go about the process? Like,
Yeah.
be intelligently lazy.
And I think that's a good phrase, and I think I'm going to underline it because everybody's about the rise and grind. I think Damon has a book about that, but the
Yeah,
reality is, if you look at the old books like Stephen Covey, Abraham Lincoln, if I had 4 hours to cut down a tree, I'm going to spend three sharpening the saw.
yeah,
Life doesn't have to be hard. In fact, it
yeah.
should be fun and enjoyable.
But I mean, that's the culture that we're in. Is and it kind of drives me nuts now when people say no one's willing to work anymore. Like you can look at all sorts of charts into worker productivity, like it's skyrocketed over the last 40, 50 years. But people are still saying no one wants to work. Yes, they want to work. They're working harder than ever.
Yeah.
You're just not, they've just started to say, like, okay, enough's enough.
Well, and I think a lot of, I've worked with some micromanagers in sales, and they get really hung up on, maintaining the database. And it's like, if I have to hear that conversation one more time,
Well, can, can we be honest? Most of us are
absolutely.
using our CRMs wrong.
Yep.
Most of us are using our CRMs. They're no longer a sales tool, they're an audit tool.
Yep.
And that's all they're being used for is they're being used as a whip to keep pushing salespeople forward.
Hmm.
Um, like if you go into your notes and you see most notes in your CRM is left message on voicemail, it's a trash system.
Yep.
Rebuild it. Like
Copy paste,
it's you've
copy
got
paste.
worthless data in there.
I love it. Now we are going to run out of time here, and I
Yeah.
apologize. We will have Red back for my listeners because I think there's so much we could talk about. How can people get a hold of you?
LinkedIn is the best way. Red Stafstrom, I have the little lion emoji next to me. You can find me on pretty much every platform, Broken Salespeople or Red Stafstrom. Yeah, those are kind of the big ones. Is just STAFSTROM. There aren't many of us with last names like IKEA furniture. So,
It's a very
um,
unique name, and we'll put it in the show notes for people to find.
absolutely.
Now, this is my favorite question. Is there anything I should have asked you that I didn't?
I mean, the big thing is if anybody wants to talk and see what their ideas are, like how their sales process is working, I'm happy to talk with you about that, kind of diagnose where some of the hot spots might be. And see if there are some ways that I could help fix them. Also, if you want some help in building a sales process for yourself as an introvert, I have a book on Amazon. I actually just changed the cover. Introvert Sales Survival Manual,
I love it.
paperback. Yeah, and it's all about step by step. How do you build that process the right way? So those are probably the two biggest things. If you want to do it, the book is a great place to start, or just reach out to me. I'm pretty easy to talk to most days.
Unless you're recharging, right?
Very much. Well, I'm usually not recharging. Like I'm good on these conversations. Again, if you wanted to talk about like, so where did you go to school? Like, I don't care about that conversation. Like, we don't need to have that. Like, but when we're talking about how do we take apart and rebuild your business, those are exciting conversations. Those are recharging conversations in a way.
You like the
It's
deep
the
dive conversations.
so like I said, I had to learn how to make small talk. And I literally have an accurate Ford's family and friends, occupation, recreation, dreams, school, and sports.
Where have you been all my life? Geez, I had to
Yeah,
figure that out on my own.
so once I learned that, like once I had to make small talk, I would literally cycle through it like a Rolodex. I hate those conversations.
Me too. Me too. I love it.
Yeah.
By the way, in Canada, we always talk about the weather, which drives me
Oh,
crazy.
yeah. It's like I'm in Connecticut. It snowed. It's like whatever. Like go out, shovel, get to work. It's fine.
Done. Well, Red, I want to thank you. It's been fun, and I look forward
Absolutely.
to more conversations. So thank you for being on the show.
Absolutely. We're doing this again.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to our show. We hope that you enjoyed this episode, and we invite you to either click the link below or scan the QR code to register and listen to other episodes of our podcast. Or if you think your business or you would be a great guest to be on our show, we're always looking for experts in one of the 9 elements of holistic wellness. We'd love to have you. You can either click the link below or you can scan the QR code and complete our speaker intake form. Thank you, and to your wellness.